I am not gay. It's funny that I even have to try to convince myself in any capacity, but I've realized I don't have to convince myself because I know I'm not. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because I've questioned my sexuality for half of my life. Ever since I can remember, when it comes to being a teenager and the idea of sex, these things have been brought up to me. Just now, while I was hanging out with a couple of coworkers and talking about certain types of sex things, one of the guys talking to a girl, and apparently she's got some magic balls up her vag. And then they're talking about anal beads, and I'm fully aware of what they are, what their name is, and they're like, "Well, how do you know about it?" Like, well, because I know these things. I learn about it. And they're looking at me all weird, kind of glancing off the side, "Oh, yeah, sure." And it made me realize something. I think I've thought that for so long because of that response. Here's the thing. Apparently, one's sexuality is very important. Obviously, I'm talking about it. I'm talking about my own. But there seems to be this idea that to be a man, only certain types of things can be talked about. Mostly women. But talking about your own sexuality, talking about your own ability to explore sexuality, to understand your body. It's just physiology. Really, more than anything else, it's anatomy and it's physiology. You got to figure out what's going on, what's there, and how that there stuff works. I don't even think I know anybody personally. Maybe one. Probably not more, though, who has explored any type of sexual stimulation outside of penis stimulation. If they're a guy, the only stimulation they understand is basically the cock and balls, and that's it. That's all they care about. That's all they'll know. Anything beyond that, you must be gay. And that's the weird thing that I think that's the issue, is that we've got people out there thinking, well, if it goes beyond, then I must like men. And that's not the case. And when I say I mean that in the plural sense of all of us. The thing is that how we are perceived is important to us. To this day, I still have issues with my own self-image and how other people see me, but I've also noticed that that has been slowly disappearing. And I enjoy the fact that it is slowly disappearing, that I'm caring less about how people perceive me. One of the things is that being perceived as gay is a negative when it shouldn't be. It's like, it should be the same as if you're perceived as straight. Why is that not a negative? Well, because being gay had associations of shame. If you were gay, you hid it from other people. And the reason why you hid it from other people is because they didn't approve of it. For one reason or another, doesn't really matter what the reasons are right now. We can go into that later. But the perception of homosexuality, especially in men, it, in their mind, diminishes masculinity. If you're gay, you can't be a real man. Which is total bullshit, and we all know this. Because what is a real man? Really? What is a real man? The first thing I think of is a car nut, a sports nut. But that doesn't make you a man. That's just your interests. What makes you a man? Well, you could go the opposite direction, and you could say your physiology, your anatomy. You have a penis, you have testicles, your body pumps testosterone through it. But then you have the psychology of it. What about people who are born male, but in their mind, they are not male, they are female? Despite their biology, despite the chemical qualities of their physical being, their psychological self-identification is not that of a male. It's of a female. And then we have the issue that just because you're one, you're not the other, and thus you must not have any traits that the other may possess. Otherwise, you are typically a negative word in some way or another. If you're a woman, she's a bitch. If she's too this, or this, and she's not feminine enough. And he's a Nancy boy if he's too many of these things. And we've been trying, it seems, or at the very least, maybe there's a solid sociological reason for it. I don't know. But we look at sex, we look at gender, we look at our gender roles in this black and white realm of identification. We must define it with these strict terms, because then if it's not, it's this thing over here. It's the us versus them. Maybe it's just because it's part of our inherent nature. The sort of hindbrain, lizard brain idea that exists that we can't truly overcome. Not yet. Because that's how we are able to determine a threat, to determine something that's different enough for us to figure out if it's friend or foe, if we should fear it or embrace it or run away from it. Ultimately, what I've come to find is that despite the number of people in this country who want to embrace homosexuals as a valid group, which they should, because they're just people who have different interests that are outside of the norm, there's still a lot of room to move. We've still got a long way to go. Rather, there's not really a lot of room at all to move. They're still very stringent on the idea. If you are able to talk about a certain type of thing, one of the guys, he was like, no, I'm never even going to be a part of a three-way if there's another dude. It's like, oh, well, he's not gay. I don't care. I'm like, okay, fine. I understand that if you don't want to be a part of a three-way with another guy, I get that. You don't have to be gay to want to be a part of that, and you don't have to be straight to not be a part of it. I get that. We all have our own desires. But when you push your own self-identification onto others and you make them feel inferior or judged because how you perceive it upon yourself, if you project your own insecurities onto others, that can make them feel worse about themselves and then perpetuate this negative bullshit. I know I'm not gay, but for many, many years I've questioned it, and I will probably still continue to question it, solely because I show character traits that are outside the typical masculine norm. Because I'm willing to talk about it, because I'm willing to educate myself, because I'm curious about these things, it becomes a subject of contention with those who don't. They'll judge you, and it's really their own fault. So, as a final thought, I guess, as hard as it can be to give no fucks about how people perceive you, just realize if they're judging you negatively for who you are, it's because they don't possess the same quality and they are unsure of themselves. Their own insecurities are projecting onto you because they aren't taking the time to try and understand themselves and improve their way of thinking and interaction with you and others. They have my pity. You have my gratitude.